My child, if this message has found you today, do not ignore what you are about to hear. There are moments in life when the truth hides behind smiles. Moments when the people around you appear supportive, yet their actions quietly pull your blessings away from you. And according to Archangel Michael, this is one of those moments. Before we go any further, I want you to pay close attention. Because this message is not about fear. It is about awakening. It is about finally seeing what has been happening behind the curtain while you were focused on surviving, healing, and carrying burdens that were never meant to be yours. Archangel Michael says, "You have spent far too long giving without questioning. Far too long trusting without examining. Far too long believing that everyone who sits at your table is celebrating your success. But heaven wants you to understand something today. Not everyone around you is connected to your destiny. Some are connected only to your resources. Some are connected only to your kindness. Some are connected only to what they can receive from you. And that realization is about to change everything. Listen carefully. Because what Michael revealed may explain years of confusion. Years of delays. Years of wondering why opportunities disappeared at the last moment. Why plans fell apart. Why support promised to you somehow never arrived. Why doors opened, only to mysteriously close again. The answer may not be where you have been looking. Because the greatest leaks in our lives rarely come from strangers. They often come from people who already have access. People who know our weaknesses. People who know our dreams. People who know exactly where to stand if they want to influence our direction. And that is why this message matters. Archangel Michael says that a season of hidden truths is ending. The masks are becoming heavy. The secrets are becoming difficult to maintain. The energy of deception is collapsing under its own weight. What has been concealed is preparing to reveal itself. Not through conflict. Not through revenge. But through undeniable clarity. You will begin noticing things you once overlooked. Conversations that suddenly make sense. Patterns that suddenly become obvious. Actions that once seemed harmless but now reveal a deeper meaning. And when that happens, do not panic. Do not react emotionally. Observe. Because wisdom sees what anger misses. Many people lose their breakthrough because they respond before understanding. Michael says your power right now is not in confrontation. It is in awareness. Awareness changes everything. The moment you become aware, manipulation loses strength. Confusion loses strength. Fear loses strength. And those who benefited from your blindness suddenly find themselves powerless. That is why heaven has been teaching you patience. You thought the waiting was punishment. But it was preparation. You thought the delays were rejection. But they were protection. You thought the silence meant abandonment. But it was actually divine timing working behind the scenes. There were things you were not meant to discover too early. Because discovering them too early would have caused you to act from emotion instead of wisdom. Now you are stronger. Now you are calmer. Now you are ready to see the truth without being destroyed by it. And that changes everything. Michael says something remarkable is happening. The very people who underestimated you are beginning to realize they misjudged you. They expected exhaustion. But you kept moving. They expected defeat. But you kept standing. They expected your faith to disappear. But it grew stronger. Every challenge they thought would break you became another reason for heaven to elevate you. And this is where the story becomes powerful. Because while others were watching your struggles, heaven was watching your character. While others were counting your mistakes, heaven was counting your perseverance. While others were predicting your downfall, heaven was preparing your restoration. Let that sink in. The battle was never only about resources. It was about identity. The enemy wanted you to forget who you are. Wanted you to doubt your worth. Wanted you to believe you were powerless. Wanted you to accept less than what was destined for you. But Michael says those days are ending. A shift is occurring. You may not see it fully yet, but you can feel it. The atmosphere around your life is changing. The weight is lifting. The confusion is fading. The path ahead is becoming visible. And soon, very soon, you will understand why certain people had to reveal themselves. Because their revelation is connected to your liberation. Their exposure is connected to your elevation. Their departure is connected to your next chapter. Do not chase anyone. Do not beg anyone to stay. Do not fight for access to places where your presence is not valued. Michael says your future is too important for that. Instead, stand tall. Protect your peace. Protect your vision. Protect your energy. And continue moving toward the purpose heaven placed inside you. Because what belongs to you cannot be permanently taken from you. What is destined for you may be delayed, but it cannot be erased. What heaven has written over your life remains written. No opinion can cancel it. No jealousy can destroy it. No obstacle can permanently stop it. And this is why Michael brought you here today. Not to frighten you. Not to make you suspicious of everyone. But to remind you that discernment is a gift. A gift that protects blessings. A gift that protects purpose. A gift that protects destiny. Use that gift wisely. Trust the lessons you have learned. Trust the growth you have experienced. Trust the strength heaven has developed within you. Because you are entering a season where clarity replaces confusion. Truth replaces illusion. And confidence replaces fear. The story is not ending. It is beginning. The chapter of struggle is closing. The chapter of revelation is opening. And when you look back on this moment, you will realize that what seemed like a setback was actually preparation for one of the greatest breakthroughs of your life. So keep moving forward. Keep believing. Keep watching. Because heaven is not finished with your story. Not even close. And there is something else Archangel Michael wants you to understand before this message continues. The moment truth begins approaching your life, resistance often increases. That is why some of you have felt unusual pressure recently. Small problems turning into bigger problems. Unexpected arguments. Strange disappointments. Moments where you felt like giving up for no obvious reason. Michael says this is not a coincidence. Whenever a person gets close to a breakthrough, old patterns fight to survive. The confusion that controlled you does not want to lose control. The fear that limited you does not want to lose influence. The doubts that kept you small do not want to disappear. But heaven says they are losing their grip. And that is exactly why you must remain alert. Because what happens next will determine how quickly your life changes. For years, you may have been looking outside yourself for answers. Looking for someone to explain why things happened. Looking for someone to validate your worth. Looking for someone to finally appreciate everything you sacrificed. But Michael says your greatest confirmation is not coming from people. It is coming from God. And when divine confirmation arrives, human opinions become powerless. Think about that. How many times did you reduce your dreams because someone else doubted them? How many times did you stay silent because someone else misunderstood you? How many times did you settle for less because someone else convinced you that you were asking for too much? Michael says the season of shrinking yourself is over. You were not created to spend your life apologizing for your potential. You were not created to hide your gifts. You were not created to live beneath the purpose assigned to you. You were created to grow. To build. To overcome. To become. And there are people who become uncomfortable whenever they see that happening. Not because you harmed them. Not because you wronged them. But because your growth reminds them of the growth they avoided. Your courage reminds them of the risks they never took. Your faith reminds them of the dreams they abandoned. That is why some resistance was never really about you. It was about what you represented. You represented possibility. You represented change. You represented a future they could not understand. And instead of celebrating it, some chose to resist it. But heaven says their resistance cannot stop what God has approved. Read that again in your spirit. Their resistance cannot stop what God has approved. The blessing may take longer than expected. The door may open later than planned. The answer may arrive differently than imagined. But if heaven approved it, it is still coming. Michael says many of you are standing closer than ever before to a major turning point. A phone call. An opportunity. A connection. An idea. A breakthrough. Something that appears ordinary on the surface but carries extraordinary consequences. The reason this matters is because breakthroughs rarely announce themselves. They often arrive disguised as simple moments. A conversation. A decision. A chance encounter. A new direction. That is why you must stay spiritually awake. Do not allow disappointment to blind you. Do not allow exhaustion to distract you. Do not allow past failures to convince you that future victories are impossible. Because your future is not obligated to repeat your past. The next chapter does not have to look like the previous one. And Michael says that is exactly what heaven is preparing to show you. A different outcome. A different result. A different season. For too long, you have carried expectations that belong to other people. You carried responsibilities that were never assigned to you. You carried emotional burdens that were not yours to carry. And the weight became so normal that you forgot what freedom felt like. But freedom is returning. Slowly. Powerfully. Unmistakably. You will begin noticing it. The need to please everyone will weaken. The fear of rejection will weaken. The pressure to explain yourself to people who misunderstand you will weaken. And in its place, confidence will grow. Peace will grow. Wisdom will grow. Michael says one of the greatest miracles is not money. It is clarity. Because once a person sees clearly, everything changes. The wrong door becomes obvious. The wrong relationship becomes obvious. The wrong habit becomes obvious. And once you see clearly, you can finally choose differently. That is why heaven is focusing on your vision before your reward. Because rewards without wisdom often disappear. But wisdom creates rewards that last. There is a reason you survived every difficult season. A reason you survived every betrayal. A reason you survived every disappointment. You thought you were merely enduring. But heaven was developing strength inside you. Strength that could not be purchased. Strength that could not be taught in a classroom. Strength that could only be developed through experience. And now that strength is becoming visible. The person you are today is not the person you were a year ago. You see differently. Think differently. Respond differently. And that growth is preparing you for responsibilities that once would have overwhelmed you. Michael says your story is entering a phase where results will begin speaking louder than explanations. You will not need to convince everyone. You will not need to defend every decision. You will not need to chase validation. The evidence of transformation will speak for itself. And when it does, some people will be surprised. Some will be inspired. Some will regret how they treated you. But your focus cannot be on any of them. Your focus must remain on the path ahead. Because the future waiting for you requires your attention. It requires your discipline. It requires your faith. Most importantly, it requires your willingness to keep moving even when the outcome is not yet visible. That is real faith. Walking before seeing. Trusting before understanding. Continuing before receiving. And Michael says heaven has seen every step you have taken. Every tear. Every prayer. Every moment you almost quit but didn't. None of it was wasted. Not 1 second. The reward for perseverance is approaching. The reward for growth is approaching. The reward for staying faithful is approaching. And when it arrives, you will understand why God refused to let you give up. Because what is coming is bigger than what you lost. Greater than what left. Stronger than what opposed you. And closer than you think. So hold your head high. Protect your peace. Guard your vision. Stay focused. Because the next chapter is already moving toward you. And heaven is preparing to reveal just how powerful your journey has truly been. And now, my child, Archangel Michael says there is one final truth you must hear. Because everything that has happened up to this moment has been preparing you for this revelation. Many people spend years asking God for blessings. Very few ask God for the wisdom required to keep those blessings. That is why heaven has been working on your character before your circumstances. Working on your patience before your promotion. Working on your faith before your reward. You may not have understood it while it was happening. You may have questioned it. You may have even cried because of it. But now the pieces are beginning to fit together. Michael says there were seasons when God intentionally slowed things down. Not because heaven forgot you. Not because your prayers were ignored. But because the version of you that was asking for the blessing was not yet ready for the responsibility attached to it. Think about that. Sometimes the delay was not punishment. It was preparation. Sometimes the closed door was not rejection. It was protection. Sometimes the silence was not abandonment. It was instruction. And now you are standing at a point where the lessons are becoming more valuable than the pain that taught them. That is growth. That is transformation. That is spiritual maturity. The person listening to this message today has survived things that should have broken them. Moments nobody knows about. Battles nobody saw. Nights nobody witnessed. You smiled when your heart was heavy. You kept moving when your spirit felt exhausted. You continued believing when doubt surrounded you. And Michael says heaven saw every single moment. Nothing escaped God's attention. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing was forgotten. Every sacrifice was recorded. Every act of kindness was recorded. Every prayer whispered through tears was recorded. And now a season of divine restoration is beginning to move toward you. Do not misunderstand this message. Restoration does not always mean receiving back exactly what was lost. Sometimes restoration means receiving something greater. Something healthier. Something stronger. Something that finally aligns with your purpose. Because God is not interested in merely replacing what disappeared. God is interested in elevating your entire future. And that is why some things had to leave. That is why some doors had to close. That is why some chapters had to end. You were trying to save things that heaven was trying to replace. You were trying to hold on to seasons that had already expired. You were trying to carry people into your future who were only assigned to your past. But Michael says that burden is ending now. The need to force things is ending. The need to chase things is ending. The need to beg for what belongs to you is ending. Because what truly belongs to you will not require endless struggle to remain in your life. When God opens the right door, peace accompanies it. When God sends the right opportunity, clarity accompanies it. When God aligns the right path, strength accompanies it. You do not have to manufacture what heaven has already approved. You only need the courage to walk forward. Michael says there is a shift occurring even now. A shift in your thinking. A shift in your confidence. A shift in your expectations. You are beginning to understand that your value was never determined by who accepted you. Your value was never determined by who supported you. Your value was never determined by who believed in you. Your value was established by God long before any human opinion existed. And once you truly understand that, everything changes. Fear loses its power. Insecurity loses its power. Comparison loses its power. The opinions of others lose their power. Because you finally realize who you are. You realize that you are not defined by your worst day. Not defined by your biggest mistake. Not defined by your greatest disappointment. You are defined by the purpose God placed inside you. And purpose cannot be stolen. Purpose cannot be cancelled. Purpose cannot be destroyed by opposition. It can only be delayed if you choose to stop moving. That is why Michael is calling you forward today. Forward beyond fear. Forward beyond regret. Forward beyond disappointment. Forward beyond everything that convinced you to doubt yourself. There are still chapters waiting to be written. Victories waiting to be experienced. Doors waiting to be opened. Miracles waiting to unfold. The story is not over. In many ways, it is only beginning. Years from now, you will look back at this season and realize something incredible. The very things that looked like obstacles became stepping stones. The very things that looked like endings became beginnings. The very things that caused tears eventually created wisdom. And the very things that seemed to delay your destiny actually guided you toward it. That is the mystery of God's timing. What feels late to us is often perfectly timed from heaven's perspective. Michael says, trust that timing. Trust the process. Trust the lessons. Trust the journey. Most importantly, trust God. Because the same God who carried you through every storm is carrying you toward every promise. The same God who protected you yesterday is protecting you today. And the same God who opened doors before will open doors again. So lift your head. Strengthen your faith. Release your fear. And step boldly into the future. Because heaven has not forgotten your name. Your breakthrough is not lost. Your purpose is not cancelled. Your story is not finished. And according to Archangel Michael, the next season of your life has the potential to become one of the most extraordinary chapters you have ever lived. Stay faithful. Stay focused. Stay ready. Because what God is preparing behind the scenes may be greater than anything you have imagined. And when it finally arrives, you will understand why every battle was worth fighting. Why every lesson was worth learning. Why every delay was worth enduring. And why heaven never stopped working on your behalf. The best chapter is still ahead. And it is closer now than ever before.